All right, now that we have our files all set up, let's go ahead and move forward and set up our HTML. So our application is going to need two HTML elements. We're going to need an input, input with a T, and let's give that a type of text. And let's also give it an ID. We're going to say that this ID is, let's just call it color input. And then let's also give this a button. And we'll say that the button text is going to say change background. All right, so if I run this, if I just come back here and refresh my page, I should have a little input and a background and a button. So I want to take this a little bit further, and this is really simple. I want this to look a little bit nicer. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to wrap each of these elements, this input and the button, inside of a div element. Let me clean this up a little bit, indent everything properly. It's whenever you have an element like an input inside of another one, like this div, or this div inside the body and the body inside the HTML tags, it's nice to indent them so that you can tell where everything is located. You can see that this is wrapped inside of this div, this button is wrapped inside of this div. There's one more thing that I want to do. I want to add a style tag. The style tag is going to be used to add some CSS or style and design to our elements here. So just like a script tag will allow me to set up some JavaScript inside my page, a style tag will allow me to write CSS. Now I'm not going to talk a lot about CSS. I hope that you've seen some of it before. If you haven't, there are plenty of tutorials on it, and vSchool has some of our own CSS tutorials. So I'm just going to go ahead and start writing something. I'm going to say div, and then I'm going to do open and closing curly brace, and I'll write text align. This is going to be center. And what that will do, and colon on the end, and what that will do is that will center my input and my button in the middle of the page. I'm also going to go ahead and delete this JavaScript that I wrote to make sure that our files were linked up, because we're not going to need that anymore. All right, so let's go ahead and also add some style for our input. Opening and closing brace. So for this, I'm going to say that this will have a height of 40 pixels. And each line is going to be a colon. This might look kind of like a JavaScript object, but it's not. Each line is going to be separate. So then I'll say font size, and let's say that's going to be 35 pixels. And let's give this a color of, I think it was dark slate gray. Dark slate gray. Now, I know I could use color hexes, but for this purpose, I'm going to keep it really simple and use just text, the dark slate gray. CSS has a bunch of colors built into it. And let's say a text align center in here. And let's also give this a border radius of 5 pixels. That'll just make the corners of the box a little round. First page, all right. So if I type something in here, we have some text slate gray text, and the text is always centered in the middle. And I want to bring this down a little bit, so I'm also going to give this a top margin. So I'll say margin top, and I'll just say 20 pixels. That should just bring it down from the top of the screen a little bit. All right, so now let's go ahead and style our button. And of course, right now, what we're doing, this would actually style every single input and every single button on the screen, but we only have one of each right now, so I'm not gonna worry about it too much. So for this, let's make this the same size as our input. So I'll say height is 40 pixels. I'll say that the font size is 40 pixels. Let's say that let's give it a background color. And let's say that this is going to be, I think it's sea green, right? And let's give it a border radius. Border radius is what will round the corners off. Let's say 5 pixels also, just like our input. And let's give this a margin top of 15 pixels. So that is brought down just a little bit from our input. Oh, that's right. All right, this text needs to be 30 pixels, not 40. All right, now it fits nicely inside that button. All right, so we have our text input and we have our button. So I think we're ready to start linking up some JavaScript.